This video will be on how to use the joins function in Fusion 360, as well as some of the other options in the assemble column. So, starting off with the easiest join function, first, go to assemble and press joins. However, you can also just press J on your keyboard, and it will pop up. Click over to the motion page and press rigid. If it's already at rigid, leave it. Go back to position, and then look for where you want to connect your parts. For example, if I want to connect this C channel to this hole on this C channel, it will automatically go to that, and you will be able to connect the both of them. This will constrain the two C channels together, so if I move this, it will also move with the other one. Another way you can use the joints is by using a slider joint. This would make it so that you would be able to slide multiple objects, just like how I'm sliding a bearing over this high strength shaft. To do so, press J and go over to motion, click on the drop down menu and press slider. Next, go over to position and select the inside cylinder of this high strength bearing. Next, you want to select the circle of the high strength shaft, and you will end up with it being exactly in the middle of both objects. To modify what you want to do with this, you can also go over to motion and set the minimum and maximum of how much you can make the object slide. So I know that the minimum is at negative and the maximum is at 0. So basically, even if I move this object all the way over here, it will stop at negative 295, and if I move this all the way up here, it will stop at 0. Next, let's move on to the revolve. First, what you want to do is, if you have two gears or wheels or any type of object that spins, so what you want to do first is press J, go over to motion, press revolute, and then go over here until you see the square insert, and you can see that if you want to select the middle part, it disappears when you drag the mouse over. So what you want to do is hover over this big circle part, press Ctrl, and then you will be able to move your mouse to the center of the square insert. So press that, and press where you want the axle to be. So in the middle here, and it will promptly move the axle over to the middle. Now, if you don't want it to go to the axle, you can simply reverse the steps. For example, you would simply reverse the steps. So, you would select the axle first, and then you would select the gear. And you can see how it's moving. If you just want it to move on its own, you can select the low strength shaft and then press ground. This way, the object will not move, and it will just spin on its own. Let's do the same for this gear. Press J, select your body, and press the square insert. Let's ground this as well. And you can see that this gear also moves along with this one. Now, what if you wanted to connect both of these gears together so that they move if one gear moves the other? What you want to do to able to do that is go over to the Assemble column and press Motion Link. Capture the position if it tells you to, and select the joints that you want to link together. Basically, you can see that this moves together, but it doesn't move correctly. For example, they are moving at the same speed, which isn't how gears work in real life. So you're going to need to use a calculator for this step, and we know that this gear is 84 teeth, and this gear is 60 teeth. So you're going to want to do 84 divided by 60, which is 1.4. And we know that if this moves once, then this would have to move 1.4 times. So what we want to do is, since we know that this is revolute 10, is do 360 and then times 1.4, or the gear ratio you know. Now you will still see that this still doesn't feel right, because it is moving in the same direction. So what you're going to want to do is reverse this, and you can see that it meshes correctly now. And you can see that if I move this 1.4 times, it moves exactly 360 degrees. Now you can use this motion link feature with any other parts, such as if I wanted to make the gear moves if the cylinder extends, I can select these two, and you can see how it extends. Now you're going to want to ground the cylinder first before you actually do stuff. But you can see here that if I move the cylinder, it spins the gear, and if I move it back, it spins the gear backwards. Now what if you've already put two objects together, but you haven't had them jointed? So what you want to do is press Shift J. This will make it an as-built joint. And basically it will do the same thing as a joint does, but you wouldn't have to select the different parts for it to connect to each other. And you can do this for any other joint, but I would recommend doing it just for the rigid joint, as it is the most accurate joint that it will be able to use. The other joints all involve something going in the middle and spinning, which is not a very good idea if you haven't had them properly centered. And you can see here that it's the same as a regular joint, it moves together. Now, what if you wanted to connect multiple pieces to the same joint? But if you wanted to do that, you'd have to make a lot of as-built joints. For example, there would be 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now, you wouldn't want to do that if you had multiple rollers like these. So, what you can do is go over to Assemble and press the rigid group. Select all the components that you want to make into one, and press Include Child Components just in case. And this would make it so that this is basically one giant body that you can move around and drag and rotate anywhere. And that will be it for this CAD series.